You're listening to Creating a Universe, a Love Anarchy podcast hosted by William J. Rogers. On this show, we follow the journey of creatives, artists, and entrepreneurs who are making a name for themselves in the ever-evolving landscape of today's industry. Featuring an insight into both Love Anarchy and the Lovaniverse music universe, as well as the individual projects and stories of each of our guests, from the music industry and beyond. So whether you're a budding creative or simply interested in what goes on behind the scenes, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Creating a Universe. I'm your host, William J. Rogers, and today I am here with guitarist and songwriter of the Symphonic Metalcore band, Crown Solace, Mr. Valentyn Tkach. How's it going, Val?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, man. It's great to have you here. Great to be having this chat.
Yeah, finally. Yeah, we've spoken Instagram a couple of times, but it's good to actually see a face.
That's it, man.
It's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one. So just in case, people been living under a rock and might not be aware of who you are, would you be able to kick things off with just a bit of an overview as to who you are and what you do?
Sure, man. Yeah. So like you said, I'm Val from band Crown Solace. Basically, I started the band a couple of years back, during lockdown. And yeah, I basically write the music, write the guitar parts, program the drums, all the other bits and bobs in the band. Obviously, Pete Rawcliffe's the vocalist, and Callum Hutchinson's on bass and screams as well. And now we've got Menzies who does drums. So that's kind of a brief overview of the band. And we literally 7 weeks ago released our debut EP, Animus, to the world after basically 3 years of being a band. So it's good to finally have a release, sort of like a solid release behind us. So we're still quite a new band. Feels like we've been doing it for ages, but that's the first proper release after 3 years. So yeah, that's kind of the brief overview of Crown Solace.
Amazing, man. Amazing. And congratulations on the release of Animus, man, because that EP is absolutely fantastic.
Yes, man. Yeah, no, it was surprised how long it took to do everything. But yeah, we're all really proud of it.
It's a lot of work making a record, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it didn't even start. There was no plan to make an EP or songs. We just did singles, and then because I'm always writing, we had these songs, and then I was like, might as well put in a package, because then it's easy to sort of promote and get a wee bit more traction online. So that's kind of how it came about.
Yeah, you guys had done obviously a few singles before that though, right? And some music videos to go with them.
Yeah. So the first song that we did with Pete, Horizons, that was kind of standalone. That was actually a really, really old song I had for years and years. And then, because we actually had a different vocalist when I first started the band during lockdown. And she actually, Ali, lived really close to us in Aberdeen. But unfortunately, when the world opened back up, she had other commitments and everything. So I kind of knew off Pete, so I reached out to him, and he was like, yeah, sounds totally cool. So I sent him this Horizon song, which was, I think, from 2019, 2020, which then became kind of like a relaunch single of Crown Solace to sort of launch Pete. And then obviously we did Inside My Mind and Dangerous Eyes, which are on the EP.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Wow, fantastic, man. Yeah, such great songs. So how, especially if people haven't heard the band before, how would you describe the band's sound?
I mean, it's definitely symphonic metal. You said symphonic metalcore, which I think you probably are, right. It is. It's got a lot of metalcore elements. And when I was younger, sort of my teenage years, I played metalcore bands. So my songwriting is sort of based around metalcore structures, and the guitarists are quite metalcore. But overlaying that is obviously Pete's voice and also the orchestral arrangements as well, which kind of then gives it a symphonic element. But yeah, I would say it is symphonic metalcore. With different vibes. Like our EP is quite varied. There's some quite straightforward symphonic songs, and there's some more sort of heavier stuff as well.
Yeah. Oh man, it's really cool. It's a really great sound. I think it's really given that kind of modern twist to a symphonic metal genre, right? And I suppose you've got quite a few unique elements to it. I'd have definitely thought that hopefully anybody listening to this will already be aware of Pete, in some shape or form, because I mean, what an incredible performer. But yeah, I mean, obviously if they're not aware, like Pete he has a very particular kind of profile voice. I mean, how would you describe Pete and his role in the band?
I mean, yeah. So Pete is, like you said, he is very unique. In my eyes, he is probably one of the best vocalists in the world in the genre. And maybe I'm biased because he's in the band.
Yeah.
But he's genuinely like, what you hear is what he's singing. You know, there's no auto-tune, there's no pitch correction, there's no nothing. And the best way I can describe it is basically, think Taria from Nightwish, pre once, you know, so Wishmaster, Oceanborn era. That's kind of what I have in my head.
Yeah.
And obviously because he is, you know, he is a guy that you do get that shock factor as well, and because his range is so varied, that's kind of one we want to go down, is to explore that, you know, crazy range that he has and have these opposing sounds. So yeah, like Pete is phenomenal.
Yeah, he really is, man, and such a great guy as well. You know, it must be so good to work with him in the band. But yeah, I mean, I guess that Pete in himself is obviously so unique. So then to put him in a symphonic metal context, which is, I guess, his main kind of style. But then the fact that you guys have such a sort of, as you said, kind of like a metalcore kind of approach, it's got this very fresh modern metal sort of sound and production to what you do. You have all the harsh kind of metalcore vocals mixed in, kind of breakdowns and things like that. Very cool, man. Like that seems like a very original package that you guys have going on.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there's two ways you can look at it. It is original, but at the same time, I think, for example, for some symphonic metal listeners, maybe it's a bit too modern, a bit too, you know, metalcore, and then for a lot of other metalcore listeners, maybe it is definitely different to metalcore. So there's two ways you can look at it. You know, at the same time, you know, finding our sound. I think that's what we try to do with the EP and going forward, is to find that right balance, essentially, for everything, you know, for the screams, orchestra, and for everything.
Amazing. Yeah, as you say, you can't please everyone, and the purists on either side might get upset. But yeah, I think that's what's cool about you carving your own path. And so you said you kind of came from a metalcore background. What was it about symphonic metal that made you think, I want to incorporate more of that?
So, I mean, it's really funny. The first metal bands I was in was symphonic metal bands. So I was into like rock, hard rock, indie. And then one of my friends, when I was like 12, 13, gave me a CD of like pirated music. It's like, check these out. And one of those bands was Nightwish. And before that, I didn't like metal because I thought, just screaming, just loud noises. And hearing that was like, oh my God, what is this? So I really got into Nightwish like when I was 12, 13, 14. And then got into metalcore after that. And then obviously there was like a metalcore scene, metal scene, hardcore scene in Aberdeen. So that's kind of the songs that I was playing. So naturally that's what I was writing for a large part of my life. And then during lockdown, you know, plenty of time. And I thought, you know what, trying my hand at writing some symphonic metal songs. And obviously finding Ali, the original vocalist, did help, because I didn't know any vocalist that could do that kind of style. And it was actually funny, she posted on a local music forum looking for musicians to make a Nightwish cover band. And I was like, oh my God, you know, in Aberdeen, didn't know anyone knew Nightwish. So like reached out, was like, it was so cool. I'm thinking of starting, you know, doing my own stuff. Would you be up for doing originals? And that's kind of how Crown Solace started in 2020.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. It's always Nightwish, isn't it? Like,
I mean,
the ultimate gateway band.
Yeah, they are massive. Like, they are massive. But yeah, they're probably the biggest influence, obviously. And yeah, just loved them for the last, you know, half my life, essentially.
Yeah, I see. So that's really cool. So it kind of sounds as if, you know, you were playing obviously a lot of metalcore and hardcore and things like that because of the music scene that you kind of came up in. Yeah. But it's almost like the symphonic metal was sort of always in your heart, and you always kind of...
That's exactly like that, man. Like, there was just never, in the local music scene, there was no one really into symphonic metal, so I was just playing. Also, I still really do like metalcore and hardcore and all that kind of stuff, but there was no other musicians. And obviously with the power of the internet now, and, you know, knowing Pete and everything, you don't really need to have the musicians here in Aberdeen. So that's kind of allowed me to then obviously write Crown Solace songs.
So how do you find that then, like the thing of like, as you say, everything became so much more online? That's obviously happened over time anyway, but then lockdown was absolutely cataclysmic. How do you find working remotely?
To be fair, like it doesn't really matter. It's strange. It doesn't really matter because when we were working with Ali for the first couple of songs, even though she lives close by, because of lockdown, obviously we never saw face to face. We're still standing her stuff online and working with Pete. You know, obviously he lives way further away, but it's still the same process. And in terms of, you know, the way I write, I just sit in this room and write myself. So I was never really a person, you know, jams with the band or, you know, has other people, you know, in the same room at the same time. So I still write by myself and then just send the demos to everyone. So it helps in a way rather than makes it harder, if that makes sense.
I'm with you, man. That's cool. All right. It's nice to get a bit of an insight into your process. So I'm imagining like you set out to start this project, you started writing your own demos, you know, yourself in your own kind of home setup. And yeah, what does that whole process normally look like from you creating the conception of a song to like, you know, getting it to a final release?
So, I mean, all the songs start with a guitar bass. So I'm a guitarist at heart, and that's how I write. So with a guitar, and basically just open up Cubase, record riffs, program drums to get the backbone of the song. At the start, I would basically then program all the MIDI stuff, like, you know, program, you know, pianos, violins, everything. But I was very slow at that, and my arrangements weren't that good. So what I do now is I write everything on guitar, all the melodies and everything, and we work with a chap called Federico from Italy. I send him basically the melodies and the files of the guitar stuff, and then he basically turns that into an orchestral version of the melodies, just because he's way better at than me, and because I sent him the MIDI stuff before, and he would be just like changing it, and it's like it's more work for him to change my MIDI rather than if I record what I hear through the guitar and send it to him, and then he does his own interpretation. So that's kind of how we've evolved. So the first couple of songs were done the original way of me doing all the MIDI, whereas the EP songs were done me recording all the guitar melodies and then being transposed into orchestra by Federico.
Nice. That's very interesting, man. That's a cool process. I don't think I've heard somebody say that before, but that makes sense. So your initial demo, it has many guitar tracks. Then you're basically playing violin and everything else.
So I mean, it'd be interesting to release like a version of the EP of the original demos.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear that for sure.
So some songs actually sound very similar. For example, Inside My Mind, it's very like, it's the same song. But then other songs, for example, Return to Dust, just
right, yeah, that's with like, hurdy-gurdy and stuff, right?
Yeah, so obviously that sounds totally different because in my head that was supposed to be like a piano, right? And then Federico's like, "Oh, why don't you try this?" So there's almost like, you know, input of writing from his point.
I see.
You know, choosing the right instruments as well.
It's the arrangement. Yeah. It kind of changes the texture, because that's interesting that it wasn't even meant to be a hurdy-gurdy at first, because just the inclusion of that instrument gives it a kind of folk metal vibe, you know, a little taste of that.
Yeah, and it was his suggestion, because obviously, you know, me and Callum live in Scotland, so it was like, get some, you know, Celtic influence or something like that, Celtic influence. And then you send that over as a version. Like, this sounds cool. Let's use that. So there is almost that disconnect from me writing it on guitar to getting the orchestral arrangement, which I kind of like as well, because it's almost like there's an extra input in the process for that orchestral arrangement. But in essence, that's how all the songs essentially from Inside My Mind forward have been done. For it, for example, on Horizons, like the piano riff that started as a guitar tapping part for a song I wrote like in 2012, I think, for like a really old band. And then I was like, you know, what would this sound like if I took this tapping part and like put it, you know, just mapped out the MIDI to a piano? And that's kind of Horizons became a thing. So it's kind of an interesting way of writing as well, I suppose. So writing it on a different instrument, transposing it to something else.
Yeah, really cool, man. And so what's it like then when the other band members come into it? What kind of role do they play?
So Pete does all the vocal arrangements. So I think I just basically sent him in, and for the EP anyway, he did everything. Same with Callum, so for the scream. So basically when Pete says, this bit would be cool for Callum to scream, then Callum, because Callum lives quite close, he comes around to here, and then we basically record the screams together, and then he usually writes his parts as well. Menzies came on board after the EP essentially, so all the drum parts are me with the mouse clicking on the MIDI.
Yeah,
so that's why some of the parts maybe, like if you're a drummer, it doesn't make sense because I'm a guitarist trying to tab out.
Sounds good though, right?
Yeah,
that's what matters.
But going forward, we're trying to incorporate everyone a bit more. So, for example, Pete actually came up to Scotland a few weeks back. So for the stuff we're writing going forward, we're trying to figure out, vocal melodies before the song's done. Because before, essentially, I would get the song pretty much done, send it to Pete for him to do the vocals on top. But going forward, want to kind of put it all together in the same process. So it's not like the vocals are staying on top of the song.
I see. Yeah.
All together. So that's hopefully going forward, it'll be a bit more collaborative, and obviously then you can make changes. If vocally it makes sense to do something different. So that's kind of the dream going forward. But obviously it's a wee bit harder because we all live quite far away. But technology shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're thinking that you would like to be able to have more writing sessions in the room together, especially when it comes to the vocals. Is that what you're thinking? Yeah,
I think arrangements. Yeah, I think that's definitely cool because when I write, obviously in my head, I think I know what it's going to sound like, but until Pete puts down his vocals and everything, maybe it would make sense to change the verse, for example, or change the structure a bit.
But you're literally giving him an instrumental then, like no melody lines or anything.
Yeah, so, but going forward, if it's more collaborative, then we can change stuff to make it for Pete, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I want to approach writing going forward. The majority of it is still done by me in the room by myself, because that's the way I work best, I think. Just writing, with a guitar. But it would be nice just to incorporate more ideas earlier on in the process, rather than sort of essentially delivering the final product and then getting the guys to put their stuff on top.
I'm with you. And so you said like the guys doing vocals, they're kind of writing their own parts. So lyrically, do you ever get involved with lyrics and themes, or you're really in the music?
Sometimes, so for example, usually Pete does his demo takes first, and then he would send us the lyrics for his parts and what's the song about, and then me and Callum would sort of sit and try and work out, the lyrics for Callum's parts and try and sort of make it stick in with the theme. But Pete's really in charge of all the lyrical content and everything. Like it's where, like in my head, vocals are an instrument, so like the notes are like there, but like the actual words and stuff I don't really take into account. Like obviously the rhythm, the syllables and stuff, but the actual thing, I'll leave it to Pete and Callum.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, that's their domain. That's cool. Yeah, I like that. But I suppose, in a way you still have your own expression in the music, right? Like I guess, especially you like enjoying writing by yourself, a sense of kind of feeling comes into that, I guess, if you're you kind of get into that flow where you're just writing and create a certain mood.
Yeah, like sometimes the song could come together really quickly. For example, Animus, that was the last song on the EP, that came together in literally like 3 or 4 days. Nice. But then the songs like Return to Dust, I worked on that for ages and ages, but it just depends, because sometimes, you can get, like you said, you get a vibe from a certain riff or whatever, and you want to make sure it flows correctly. But that's a bit that I enjoy about making music and creating is that, taking it from a riff to that final product. And that's kind of why I'm doing the band.
Nice.
That whole journey.
Nice. So would you say that you see yourself as a producer at all? Do you identify with that?
No, because in my head, I produce. Well, like when you say produce, a lot of people think that involves mixing and mastering.
I know, yeah. Exactly.
In terms of producing, in terms of maybe like arrangements, yeah, like that's I do that when I'm writing. Vocally as well, obviously, I go back to Pete's like, "Oh, it'd be cool if you did this." Callum would be cool to do this. I don't like the tag producer because there's a bit of I don't know, like pompous element to it, maybe like and the fact a lot of people do think it's to do with mixing and mastering and all that kind of stuff. Which we'll leave to the professionals.
So do you prefer to see yourself, how would you identify yourself most? As a songwriter?
Probably, yeah. I mean, guitarist, songwriter, that's, like I said, guitarist first and foremost. That's kind of what I'm most comfortable with and how I express the music through the guitar. Even when I'm like, noodle on a guitar in my head, that's a piano melody, for example, but it's still based on the guitar. So, yeah. And I think that's maybe what gives us a bit of not an advantage, but a difference to other bands is that because it starts on a guitar, it's still like a guitar focused band, if that makes sense, but there's also phonic elements. Whereas if, it started on a keyboard, it's a different type of playing rather, so yeah, that's just another way of writing, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that sums it up actually really nicely because it does put into perspective the difference of your guys' sound and the more like metalcore elements and such like that. Because now you say it, yeah, perhaps you're right. Especially if you think of like Nightwish and Tumos being the main songwriter, right? So yeah, it's very much like orchestrating music and then putting metal into that. And yeah, it's cool. It's cool that you're saying that yeah, very much still comes from the guitar and that kind of adds a uniqueness to your sound.
Yeah, no, I think you put it exactly there. Obviously, with Thomas, he does the keyboards first, whereas I do it back to front. Guitars and drums, then add on the layers on top of them.
Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, very very cool indeed. And then so yeah, you said let the professionals do that. So I guess you kind of coordinate everything coming together, and then you send that to somebody to mix and master.
So I tried to get into mixing and mastering before, like back in 2011, 2012, when, the gent days of like Misha Mansour getting big, like self-producing was all the rage. And I tried to get into that, but I find it better just to prepare everything, get all the stems done, get the DI tracks. There's literally about like 70, 80 tracks for the song, and we just send it to someone that's literally their job is to make it sound better. I kind of know what to do, so I do like our own sort of demo mixes to send to the folk that we work with. But yeah, it's better to pay someone who knows what they're doing to get a better product rather than try and essentially teach myself how to do it when there's people that make money from it rather let them do it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. It's a sensible thing to do, especially because I think that it really helps to have that another pair of ears on it, and that objectivity, because I kind of find that that's the place where if you're mixing and mastering all your own stuff, that's where it can start to get really drawn out and you're mixing the song for like weeks.
100%. And it's like, where do you draw the line? And obviously because, I know in the song, literally from the guitar riff to the drums and all that, and having all those layers, sometimes it's like you said, it's good to have someone else listen to the song. And sometimes you get a mix back and they, for example, make the violins way more prominent in the mix than you would do, and it changes the vibe of the song. So just like when we get, Federico's tracks of the guitar tracks, with orchestra, someone's take on a mix can also change the vibe of a song or make it sound totally different. So it's sometimes good just to get someone else to do it. So that's where we get other people in, just to make sure it's a good quality product that we are putting out, because we put a lot of effort into it. There's no point putting something that's not sounding as good as it can be. So that's why we work with other folk.
Nice. Yeah, very, very sensible, man. And so, it seems like you guys have great momentum going, and rightly so. As you say, you're putting out very quality product. Where do you see things going next for you guys as a band?
So I mean, playing live shows, that's our next sort of goal. That's why Pete was up also in Aberdeen a few weeks ago, just practicing. That was actually our first practice all together. So we practiced as a three, so drums, guitar and bass, basically me, Callum and Menzies. And also Pete, we send the tracks to Pete and he practices by himself down in England. But that was the first time us four actually played, the songs, and it was really cool to get together in a room and do that. So that's the plan for 2024, is to get shows on the go, and write new music. And we're already writing new stuff, always writing. So that's kind of the plan: release new music, play shows, and just see what happens.
Amazing. It must have been so good after all the awesome work you guys done together to like get into a room together and play those songs together for the first time.
Yeah, it was so cool because also we've seen Pete sing before, but it was the first time, obviously, in a band environment, essentially like a live environment, and just seeing Pete being literally like how he is on record, and be like, this is going to sound really cool live.
Yeah.
So that's our plan, is to get the live show up to a good standard, and get some gigs for 2024. So we're speaking to some promoters and everything. So hopefully some stuff to announce quite soon.
That's exciting, man. That's exciting. I hope to see you in London or at least somewhere around. Are you using like click tracks and stuff for the orchestral arrangements?
So this MacBook that I'm speaking you through to will be the orchestra. So that's one of the things why we didn't have a drummer to start with, is because for this type of music, you need to make sure the drum is up to scratch. That can play essentially to a click track, to a backing track. So the orchestral stuff is running from Cubase. Menzies gets the click in the ears, and the orchestral mix goes to the front of house. So that's another reason why we want to make sure the live show is up to scratch, because there's so many elements to the songs. It's not just guitar and bass and drums and vocals. Also, there's the orchestral stuff as well. And also, if you mess up with a click track, the click track's going to keep going. So you have to make sure that you're tight enough, and everyone knows what's happening in the set. So that's kind of the reason for the practices.
Yeah, I suppose it's pretty handy, as you said, that the instrumental core of the group, like you guys are local enough to be able to practice more, and then so Pete can kind of add into that.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're doing. So the practices with us three is to get musically that we're tight enough, so Pete can just come in and just sing over the top of us like you would do at home over a track. So that's kind of the plan. But yeah, I mean, it's getting all the songs done, because our songs they're not the most complicated, but some of them obviously a bit longer as well, and making sure all of them are up to scratch.
Nice, man. Yeah, that's super exciting. So I want to I'm really curious, because you've spoken about a few things here about you being in other bands and all sorts, but I'd be really curious to kind of take it all the way back to the beginning and get an idea of your musical journey. So when did you first get into music?
So I got into music when I was 7. So I lived in Manchester, and because I've got basically a Ukrainian background, Ukrainian Russian background, when I went to this new school in Manchester, the teacher's son played in a Russian orchestra with balalaikas, and they were English, which was really, really weird. But my teacher's son played in a balalaika orchestra, and she was like, "Oh, you speak Russian? It would be cool if you came to this concert that they did once a year." Went on to this concert, and that was my first ever live music experience. I was blown away with folk playing a balalaika. Do you know what a balalaika is?
But would you?
It's like a 3-string triangular guitar where
yes, okay, yeah, I know the one. Yeah,
really weird tuning, but it's a folk instrument. Nice. And I was blown away, and I was like, I really want to play that. And they didn't take kids on until they were 12, but because of my background, they're like, oh, it must be cool, get an actual Russian speaker into this orchestra, because it was all local kids doing it. So I started playing that when I was 8. And that's kind of how I learned to read music, learn chords and everything. And then at that point, living in Manchester, I was enrolled into, I think it was a Northern College of Music in there, because I was really into music. This is about 8, 9, 10, 9, about 9 years old. But then unfortunately my parents had to move and moved to Cambridge. So I kind of left that and kind of abandoned music for a good number of years until I was like 12, 13, when I actually got into Nightwish, and I was like, I really want to play guitar. And having that sort of foundation, reading music and playing the balalaika and learning piano as well, kind of allowed me to self-teach myself guitar. So that's kind of how I learned to play guitar, was because I had that understanding and playing along to songs. Basically, I kind of self-taught myself guitar. And then 15, 16, you want to get into bands, local bands, and I just started playing in a local scene and a couple of bands with Callum as well. And those were the metalcore bands, because that's kind of what was going on at the time. And that's kind of, songwriting and performing live and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the overview of my musical journey.
That's cool. I love the overview. There's definitely some really interesting components there. Can you still play a balalaika?
Probably. I haven't played it in a good. I just remember some stuff. It's a really weird tuning, because it's basically like octaved. So it's basically like a guitar, but just like you just need to figure out, because like two E's and then like a low C. But yeah, okay. I mean it's still 2
E's and a low C. That's interesting. And are they like nylon strings or?
No, they're not. So they're like basically like metal strings, and you play with your finger. You use your finger as like a plectrum, as a pick.
Right. Yeah.
You get, it's a really weird. You should like YouTube some videos of like people.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
I've seen them a lot. Like my son is half Russian, and so he has a lot of these Russian books where you see, I don't know, funny animals playing them and stuff. But I haven't actually really watched somebody play him in real life. So
but because it's like a stringed instrument, like that gave me the foundation for guitars. And obviously, if you can play one instrument and you understand.
Would you say it's kind of similar to a banjo or something?
A little bit, yeah.
Or kind of like a shamisen, like,
so
Japanese.
It's very similar to like, a domra, like a Greek instrument.
Okay, yeah.
In that Russian orchestra that I played in, they had domras as well. But it's a really weird instrument. But because of that, the way that I learned it wasn't through tab, like most guitar players. It was actually through reading music. So it's an interesting way of learning music, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. That orchestra sounds so interesting. So was it all like folk instruments or?
Yeah, it was a Russian. It was called like the St. Petersburg, Manchester St. I can't remember what it was called. It was basically it was like a charity it was like a UK orchestra full of British people that raised money for causes in Russia.
Right. Okay.
And it was because I could speak Russian, they just took me in at a young age.
Yeah. Nice.
It was really interesting because it was balalaika, domra. There was like the bass version of a balalaika, which is like a really big balalaika, but it's essentially like a bass. And that was like my first experience of live music and performing.
Wow, that's so cool, man. Definitely a unique one. Again, another one that nobody else has been able to tell such a story. But the teenage era, that's certainly a lot more familiar. Teaching yourself guitar and playing bands and stuff. So you mentioned obviously that Nightwish was on a compilation and the metalcore stuff. Like what was your gateway into metal? Do you remember like the first time hearing metal in general?
That was Nightwish. That was generally the gateway. Because before then, I was kind of listening to what my dad was listening to, which was like 80s rock. I mean, I think the hardest thing was probably like Europe or something, like the final countdown. And then, but I like the rock, the drum and bass, and like the stock guitar. I get that energy. And then, anytime I did hear metal prior to Nightwish, was like the heaviest stuff. I remember someone showing me Slipknot, and I was like, "What is this? Like, what is this shouting?" In my head, metal was always like really shouty, really aggressive, no melody. And when I heard Nightwish, I realized, oh my God, so you can actually have melody. You can have like opera vocals. And Nightwish was the gateway then into heavier music. Like from there, kind of got into power metal, into like hard rocks, and then obviously metalcore and alternative music was quite big, in 2009, 2010. So that's kind of the bands that were on Scus TV. Do you know if you remember that?
Right, of course, man. Yeah. Anybody in the UK, like, it was just flicking through between Kerrang and Scuzz.
Yeah,
and if you don't like one that was on, you switch to the other one.
That was literally my like musical education.
Me too, man. Yeah.
And then from there, kind of just went then into the heavier side, just because back then in the UK there was like literally no power metal or symphonic metal. And then kind of just went kind of heavier and then kind of back up to symphonic metal now.
Right, yeah, I see. Yeah, so at first you were turned off by the heavy, but symphonic ended up leading you to the heavy stuff and then back to symphonic. Nice, man. Nice. So any other particular artists or, pieces of music or things that just like really stand out or really impacted you?
There's not as like singular bits, but like for me, going to live shows was really eye-opening and quite inspiring, because for me, the reason I then started playing in metalcore bands was going to those shows and seeing the live performance and seeing the energy from the crowd and people performing the music. And that's kind of what got me into playing the balalaika in the first place, was actually going to that concert and seeing people play. So for me, going to live shows and just seeing that is what inspired me, rather than sort of any particular band or song or piece of just going to live shows. So like when I was sort of 15, 16, going to shows, that was really, I think, probably eye-opening, and I was like, this is so cool, I want to do that. And that's why I started writing my own music.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, man. There is something magical about a live show, the energy that's in the room. Like,
100%,
yeah. Do you think so? I mean, for you obviously started this project in lockdown and everything, so it's been kind of a studio project this whole time, but has that always been the real aspiration, like playing live?
I think so. I mean, yeah. I mean, when I started the project, I'll be honest, there was no sort of thought or reason behind what we were doing. But I think when Pete came on board, we always kind of spoke about playing live and getting shows. So I guess that was always kind of the end goal, but it was never really like the thing to do like right now, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But it was always on the cards. So it was never designed to be like a studio project or something just for recording. So live shows were always spoken about. We're working towards them. So hopefully soon.
Yeah. All right. So to rephrase then, with that in mind, what do you recall certain live shows that really impacted you? Yeah.
So I mean, the first like heavy show I went to was a band called August Burns Red.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was like the first like moshing show. Like was like, what everyone doing? Like why are they and that was just like seeing like a room of like 700-800 people, just literally just looking at these 5 folk on stage, and just having a great time. That stands out as a really big show to me. And seeing Nightwish for the first time as well in 2008, because I always see Nightwish on like the End of an Era DVD on YouTube videos. And then finally seeing a band that I followed for years live was like, oh my God, that was probably one of the favourite shows I've ever been to.
Yeah, wow, nice. That was with a net, I suppose, right?
That was with a net, yeah. So, those kind of the biggest shows, like seeing essentially like your favourite band, and then also seeing this really heavy moshing show, the two that really stand out.
Nice. I mean, it's perfect, isn't it? Again, coming back to the sound of Crown Solace. That's
Yeah, I mean, there
pretty
you go.
much it in a
Well,
nutshell.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Nice, man. Yeah, wow, I like that a lot. All right, I have to ask you this just because, again, Nightwish is just in symphonic metal, all roads lead back to Nightwish, and this one's come up a few times. So I'm curious, who would you say is your favorite Nightwish vocalist / album as well?
Jeez, you can't say that.
So
I
I'm
would have
putting it
to
on you now.
say, vocalist-wise, I think Tarja. I think she obviously gave Nightwish the sound. My favourite albums as a group are with her, with like Once, Century Child, Wishmaster. My favourite album, believe it or not, is Dark Passion Play with Annette, because
cool.
I got into Nightwish just as End of an Era came out, so obviously had that back catalogue. So that was the first album I had, the hype of waiting for, and first new Nightwish music.
Yeah, that was the same with me. I remember watching it on MySpace, like them dropping those new music videos and stuff.
Yeah, that album was leaked during the summer, so I think the album came out in September or October. But during the summer, it was like leaked with like promo voiceovers, and I remember listening to them like during the summer. Like found it on like LimeWire or something. Like this really bad quality recording of like Dark Passion Play, which was really weird. But live, to go back to your question, I think Flo Janssen's the best, technically, like the best vocalist in terms of like live performance.
She's a powerhouse, isn't she?
Yeah. So seen them a couple of times with Flo Janssen, and she's amazing. But still think it's Tarja for me.
Nice. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, just because. Yeah, I suppose there is just such a nostalgic element to it. That end of an era is just so kind of a perfect moment in time.
Yeah, that's to me, that's, I think, peak symphonic metal. I think end of an era, like the whole arena show, because like that was like one of the, I think it was Nightwish is one of their first arena shows they did, the biggest show they did in Hot Wall Arena back then. So for them, obviously, that was like a massive show. The DVD that they did. So absolutely love that show.
Yeah, it's fantastic, man. Absolutely legendary. So okay, I'm curious then, what were your experiences like in the teenage bands? Were you in many?
So it was in two main ones. I mean, the main one was called Rise with Honor, and we basically just played around Scotland. But we got not successful, like we got semi, whatever you want to call it. We did a music video, and back in 2012, no one really did music videos. It was like all lyric videos and stuff. So we did a music video, and it did like 50,000-60,000 views.
Nice.
So for us, that was like, oh my god, that's massive, for teenagers. So that was really cool, and learning backing tracks. So back then, like sub drops and like reverse cymbals were all the things.
Yeah.
And then because we couldn't get like proper like setup, what we did was get like an iPod track, like click track left, the front of bass track right, split it for the drummer. So it's just like learning these like really cheap ways of like essentially doing a live.
That's creative.
Yeah, so like those little bits even help now when we're trying to, obviously do Crown Solace stuff, maybe a wee bit more higher quality than that. But like it taught me, playing live, playing to a clip track, and setting up quickly and playing shows and coming off stage, because a lot of these smaller shows as well, like 4 or 5 bands playing, you have like 10 minutes to set up. So it was just how a show runs. So it was good to get experience at that age of what performing live is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds great, man. And so you were doing that with Callum as well. So you guys have been kind of musically entwined for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Callum for a long time. He was actually my best man at my wedding. So like,
nice.
I've known him for years. So like when we needed a bassist and a screamer, it was like no brainer for it to be him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we were in another band called Winston Remorse, which again, like the name says, is very generic metalcore, just like 5, 7, 8 riffing, just
Nice.
But yeah, it was a good experience, and I think looking back now, also you cringe at like some of the songs they were writing and stuff, but without it, wouldn't be writing the stuff I'm writing now without writing those songs. So there's no sort of regret there.
Mm-hmm. So was it teenage, or did it carry on much into your 20s, or did you have a bit of a gap with music again?
So started at 15, I left Rise with Honor when I was 19, 20. And that was because I got a real job.
Uh-huh.
So, and then I kind of always, after I left Rise with Honor, I still had all my gear and stuff. So still kind of writing in my head. I was like, I'm going to do something. So did some demos for a couple of years, tried to get something going. And then obviously when lockdown happened, went on furlough, so had all the time in the world to basically write. And that, so kind of because of COVID and lockdown, Crown Solace happened, because it gave me the time to then write and flesh out their ideas, rather than writing a song and leaving it for like 6 months and then coming back to it and trying to do it. So yeah, so from 20 till about, how old am I? COVID 27. Just for 7 years, I just basically, just wrote stuff at home and didn't really do much with it.
Yeah, so more as a hobby, I suppose. And so, would you say, what's your relationship always been like with music, in terms of, is it something that you've wanted to do professionally, or?
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny, like looking back, since I was 15, that's the only real true thing that I really wanted to do. Like, obviously, in school, they force you through to, especially if you're like academically good, like go to uni, get a job, all this stuff. And then music is never really treated as a way that you can make a living or make money. It's just like, the lucky few that get to do it. So because of that, I went into uni not doing music. So for me, it was always like an escape, essentially. And it's only the last couple of years, starting Crown Solace and sort of putting more time and effort into it, seeing the opportunity that you can get in music, and there is more to it rather than select few that are making money. There's so many other options. 10, 15 years ago, didn't know that. So I would love to do this more, because at the moment we're not making any money from it. We're actually losing money because the amount of money we're putting in, and like the money that we're not getting back is to pay for like, the music videos and everything. But that's kind of the pipeline dream, if you will, is to hopefully make the band sustainable for itself. So that we're not putting our own money into doing the music videos, recording and stuff. So, but who knows? It's in the future. But that's kind of the pipeline dream.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Yeah, that's cool. It seems like a reasonable relationship to have with it, and I think that's very achievable for you guys as well. Because as you say, it's like an investment, really. All that you guys are making in the band at that point so far, to get there. And I think at the very least you can achieve that sustainable level. I think the way that I think about it is, as you said, about the opportunity that is there. Obviously it's very saturated, and that's like the school system and whatever. They're going to be like, not take it seriously, because they're like, come on, get a real job, as you said. Because it's easy to be like, oh, I want to be a pop star or a rock star. But the point is, like, yeah, the opportunities are out there for you to go and take. It's just that, I guess that's where it requires a sense of entrepreneurship, right? As someone like you, starting a band yourself, you're basically starting a business and being like, all right, I'm going to sell this brand of music, That
is 100%, man. That's exactly what it is. And like, because I have my own business outside of music, that I look at it as a creative thing as well. You're creating, you're creating a product, you're creating this. So there's a lot of similarities with music and business. And I think a lot of musicians are held back by realizing that aspect, because a lot of people think you do it for the passion, you do it for the love of the music, which is correct. But you do need to have a business outlook on your decisions. And especially for us in Crown Solace, because Pete lives, literally the opposite end. If you look at a map, we're northeast, east, southwest. For example, the shows that we're going to be playing, they have to make sense for us, not necessarily financially, but for having the right crowd in front of us and making sure we get the right exposure, because we all have other jobs and commitments. So when we do take the time out, the return has to be there for us. So we have to put a little bit of thought and effort before to hopefully get the best outcome from that. But yeah, it takes experience to realize that there's a lot of decisions that are business orientated at all levels, from bands like us all the way up, that you have to think about to get, to work your way up. You constantly have to be thinking of that.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's great as well that you're running your own business and things outside of it, because as you say, I think it's so overlooked, and everyone, we obviously there's so many stories in the music industry about terrible exploitation, managers, labels, all sorts of things like that. But the whole point is, what they're really exploiting is that artists are afraid of the business side. We're like, I just want to play music and let somebody else take care of all of that. But if that's your mentality, then you are just kind of hoping, you're wishing that someone else is going to come along and do it. Whereas if you're willing to actually get stuck in and, take care of the business side yourself, or at least tend to it and think about it that way, then you can make stuff happen.
100%, yeah. And I think a lot of, for example, our record labels are bad, they steal from artists. Maybe that there are some labels, I know stories of labels that do that, but it's such a small percentage of it. Of course, a lot of it does come from the fact that maybe some people don't want to recognize that a label is a business as well, and they are going to be making money off of you. And it's a two-way transaction with a label. Essentially, you're providing them your music for them to market, they're making the money, and you're getting a cut. Obviously, the conversation of whether that cut is, consummate to what you're providing, that's a different conversation. But at the end of the day, that is how a musical contract is done, and I think people do need to realize that, rather than sort of saying, oh, labels are bad or do this, is to understand, the basics behind the business decisions. And I think it would help a lot of people at all levels of their musical journeys.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. That's cool, man. It sounds like you're well equipped to deal with that. So, what, in terms of have you all followed a specific trajectory outside of music then? You went to university, you said, and then now you're in your own business. Is that?
Oh, man. So I went to school to do mechanical engineering.
Right, nice.
Because in Aberdeen, there's a massive oil and gas industry. And because I just wanted to play music, didn't care about anything, but because I had good grades, the teacher was like, oh, why don't you go do this? And I was like, okay, well, if it gets, my parents and the teachers off my back, I'll go. Did 2 years of it, absolutely hated it. I dropped out. I went to work in a bank, worked there for a couple of years, went and did car sales, and then I did Open Uni business management and economics.
Right.
So I did that. Now I work for a media company, basically, and I also own a specialty coffee shop as well on the site. So that's kind of the business side of my life. But working for a media company and working in advertising and marketing, and just seeing some of the budgets that local businesses are spending, and just the strategies that they use, and just seeing a lot of it can translate to music as well. Like you said, bands are businesses, a lot of the stuff that does work for businesses does work in music as well.
Yeah. Wow. I see where you kind of laughed when I said, was there a specific trajectory? Because that's actually quite a lot of different things, man.
No, I mean, yeah, so like I said, leaving school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Well, I just wanted to play music. But yeah, and maybe the only regret I have there is going into uni and not trying to do something more with the music. But again, hindsight's a great thing, looking back. But I think maybe when you are younger and you're looking at the music industry and looking at the music scene, because there's almost this thing of you can't make money in the music scene, there's almost like a fear that comes from it, because then you're like, oh, well, can't do that. I'll need to go do this. Whereas I think if I maybe understood more of it, it would have been a totally different story.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, man. So that's interesting that you chose. What made you choose to go and do business and economics then?
Because I was interested in business, because I think there is a lot of similar, well, in a creative, I think if you have a creative mind, you want to create things, whether that's music, businesses, create money, if that's a way of saying it.
Yeah,
but
sure, yeah.
Learning, I just wanted to learn basically how businesses operate, because I wanted to run my own businesses, if that makes sense. And I did most of it during COVID as well, because I had that time. If you ask me if it's worth it or not, that's a totally different conversation. Whether,
sure.
Doing uni is worth it, but that's why I did it, because I just wanted to do my own thing basically, and I felt like that was a good way of getting information and knowledge on it.
So I'm guessing the media company has been your main gig then, and then the specialist coffee.
So the coffee shop was quite new. We started it in May, but it's doing a lot better than I thought it would.
Awesome.
So work full time for the media company, got that on the side, and obviously the band as well. So
busy man.
But I love it. I think that's why.
That's great.
If you have a positive outlook to doing things will happen for you. For example, if I look at the first song we did for Crown Solace, I don't think it's very good, or we didn't promote it very well, and some people have been negged out by the response. But because Pete reacted to that Instagram story, started speaking with Pete, and now Pete's in the band, so there's always you can always draw a line back to something from all the actions that you're doing. So keeping an open mind, I think, is the best way of sort of living life.
That's it, man. That's it. And every objective failure, right, is just a chance to learn, right? It's all part of the process.
I mean, that's a good way of looking at it. Obviously, when you're in that moment and you're looking at it, it can be like, oh, why didn't that do well, or whatever. But it sounds corny, but everything does happen for a reason at the end of the day. So it's up to us to find that reason.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. This one's definitely come off a few times that like I referred to before as like the death of innocence of an artist. Your first single, when you put it out like this is going to be amazing, and then it's like, oh.
To be fair, like I do miss doing music. Just playing along to a song. Like play along to some of the songs that I like. Whereas now, every time it feels like I'm playing music is literally in front of a screen with my guitar, trying to record something or write something or practice or whatever. Whereas there's when you're a kid just playing along to your favorite songs, there is almost like innocence, like you said. And then you like, oh, I'll do the song. You release it and you realize most people don't really care. So it's that journey there. But like you are right. I think that innocence is kind of what was cool, in your younger years playing.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of investment to get people to care that much.
Oh, I mean, that's with anything. That's not just with music. I think that's with business. If you go on the high street, open up a shop selling T-shirts, end of the day, most people will walk past it. They might look into it, they might check it out, maybe 1% will buy one. But it's your job then as that business owner to market it, to make sure it looks nice, that the product is good, that you get customer service, all that kind of stuff. And the same with music, make sure the music is good. A lot of people forget, like, you do have to write good songs. And I'm not saying that I write good songs or whatever, but like you have to make sure that the music stands up for itself as well. That
you have to have a good quality product. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. And nowadays in the digital world that we live in, the product is not just the actual music, it's like the quality of the recording, what we spoke about earlier, it has to be good. For example, the reason we do music videos is because they're more discoverable on YouTube. Like YouTube pushes music more than on Spotify. Well, usually, social media now is kind of important because that's how people find you and interact with you. And the post that they see is kind of like, your digital footprint. So if someone's checking you out for the first time, it's not necessarily they'll be even listening to your song. They may be looking at a video or seeing one of your posts. So just making sure everything ties in together. So just like having a t-shirt shop on the high street, you need to make sure that your band and music has a good shop front as well.
That's it, man. As you say, like it really just is a business. You got to think about your brand, as you're saying. How that all ties together. You got to think about you studied the business and the economics of the whole thing. So why do you think then? Because partly there is something funny, isn't it, about us being musicians, creative people. I feel like there is some sort of almost taboo about business or artists thinking about business.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Two things. I think one, there's almost like this, the starving artist trope. When someone's like, doing it just for the love of the music, of the art. People feel sorry, or they think that piece of art is more worthy than someone writing a song that does millions of streams. And there's also the thing of like selling out. People think that if you write something commercial or if you get success, it's because you've changed something to make it. You changed it for.
It's like manufactured.
Yeah, it's like manufactured. Like you didn't write it because that's the way you wanted to write. You wrote it because people will like it. So people seem to think that that's a bad thing. And I think just a mixture of that, and especially in the alternative music scene, money is a very taboo thing. If you look at in the pop world, like Taylor Swift right now is breaking all these records. Everyone's speaking about, how much money she's making on the tour. You look at like rap songs, they're like, yeah, we made this X amount. Whereas in the alternative music sphere, no one's really speaking about it. And it's kind of like a closed cycle. So yeah, people don't speak about it. So it then makes it
That's so interesting, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, why would you think that is? Again, not to try and get like too political here, but there's almost like a kind of leftist punk type of vibe in alternative music. Do you think?
Yeah, I think it probably comes from anti-establishment type stuff. Like from punk back in the day. I think obviously naturally alternative music doesn't get as much traction as mainstream music.
Yeah, I guess that's the point, right? It's got to be a bit anti-establishment, alternative to mainstream.
And I guess people look for validation in other ways other than monetary or recognition. So when you do challenge the status quo, or some artists challenge the status quo of what success is, then you do get that pushback. It's kind of like, some people say, you made it when you get haters. It's kind of that element. But for me, it's really interesting to realize why, because I think a lot of people are held back by not speaking about it.
Yeah.
Money or business side of things, whether that's in music or anywhere in life, because I think it will help literally everyone by just thinking about it. It'll help just rationalize your decisions in a way that hopefully lead to better outcomes.
Yeah, it certainly puts you more in control of your situation, as opposed to being like a victim. Like, oh, if only, my music is so good, but if only somebody paid attention or whatever. Yeah. Whereas, actually there is more that you can do about it, right?
Yeah, I think taking ownership of the situation and being like self-aware of that. You release this music, maybe did, we only did X amount of streams, you thought we would do more. But at the end of the day, you can't blame an algorithm for that. You can't blame people for not sharing it. End of the day, it comes down to the fact that, yes, you made that piece of music, and if it didn't resonate with people, well, unfortunately, it didn't resonate with people. And being okay with that is important. And I'm not saying that we're good at it by any stretch of the imagination. We've had, we released singles, it went up and up. And then, for example, Dangerous Eyes released it, and then the figures were lower from that. There will be reasons for why that is. But there's no point being, beating yourself up about it. You have to realize what happened and change it if you want, if that's what's important for you. So yeah, that's kind of just being self-aware of what you're doing and what's happening.
Yeah. And again, it's all learning, right? And I think that's the thing, is that it is just more holistic than that, because I think, as you're right, as you say, like, it's definitely a very important factor. The art itself is this song actually resonating with people? Is the quality there? These are totally valid questions that we have to ask ourselves. But then there is so much more to it. There is like the marketing, the stuff that goes more in the business side. And it's like, well, actually, yeah, it's because something with the campaign was off. There's something that, we should learn from and apply to in future, all of these aspects.
Yeah,
because there's a lot that affects it.
It's a massive package, like everything. The music is also part of it, a large part of it. But there is a lot of different stuff. I mean, for example, with Dangerous Eyes, we had some what they called on Instagram reels made for the song. They did okay. Then we changed up the reels and they did better. And realizing, which of those did better, you can then concentrate on doing more reels like that did better. So just analyzing what you're doing as well and looking at the results to then improve, rather than, this reel didn't do well, there's no point doing another one, because that's a bad way of looking at it.
Of course, yeah, certainly, man. Yeah, a bit defeatist. But it's interesting what you said about the almost being a pride about, you're just doing it for the love of it. And I think this is interesting because I feel like most people kind of share a similar sentiment to what we said, that is, whether your expectation is that or not, most of us would like to do this professionally. Like, if we could just release our art and make a sustainable income from that would be absolutely fantastic. But that would be us being a professional artist or musician. Now, the actual definition, I believe, of the word amateur, which I guess would be like the opposite of a professional, an amateur is somebody that does it for the love. That's actually, I believe, what the real definition of amateur actually came from. So if you're really purely just doing it for the love, then you're an amateur. And if you want to be a professional artist, something's got to change, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. But like, if you think about like, what is a professional musician, what is an amateur musician? There's no, there's no award that you suddenly get, just because you can play the scale, right? You're a professional musician, or because you wrote the song. There's no definitive, switch between, doing it professionally and not professionally. So, I think just looking at, I think you are right that if you do it for the love and you generally have no expectations or hopes of the song doing well, then yeah, probably you can say that someone is an amateur. But at the same time, for example, if someone does it for the love and they create a masterpiece and it's amazing, how would you call that an amateur piece of work? You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's funny, isn't it? It's kind of a loaded term, but it almost sounds like an insult, doesn't it? To say, you're an amateur. But I just thought it was interesting, the origins of that word. I remember hearing it one time, and gives you that perspective.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, no, it's interesting to know that.
I think it's definitely, I think the point to drive home is, like, if you really, really want to be successful as a musician or an artist, then you're certainly going to do yourself the biggest favor by, if you want to do it professionally, think about more of the profession than just the creation, I suppose.
Yeah, like, thing is, like, so two things. First of all, if you don't try and do it as a professional, if you don't try to get better, do it as a professional, whatever, you will never, it's never going to happen. Sometimes you have to assume the profession. That's the thing. Like, you have to assume that, people are going to be watching you, or they are going to be listening to your song, or they're going to be wanting to hear you. So, like, having that outlook and delivering that content, whether it's music, reels, whatever it is, will then help when people do, see you or hear your music or watch your video. So, almost having an expectation, not an expectation that people will listen to it, but then have an expectation for yourself to deliver that content that people will, watch it, listen to it, will then help you when it does. It's almost like a self-fulfilling thing. Like if you don't have that expectation, it's not going to happen. And if you do have that expectation, if and when it does, it will be better for you.
Yeah, man. I'm with you, man. And obviously we have touched on a load of things here, really, but I'd just be curious of your experiences studying business and logistics, running your own business now, working in the media company and seeing all these budgets and stuff that you were talking about. Do any particular lessons come to mind of specific things that would really be applicable to musicians and creators?
People are afraid to take risks. That's what I've noticed from business and everything. People are afraid to take risks. Like, for example, even music, people do the album campaigns, 3 singles, then album drop. Same with a business that's been advertising in the newspaper for years. They're still doing it because they're afraid to take that budget, put it somewhere else. And yes, on one hand, you can say it's working, but on the other hand, I think the way that the world's changing, you have to be open to new way of doing things. And for us, if we take it back to music, we want to be doing more singles, for example, rather than having a fixed album, which in the alternative sphere is still relatively like a new way of doing things. And that's kind of like the lesson, is that just because something's worked for X amount of years doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So it's trying to figure out, the best way, maybe a new way of doing something.
Yeah, man. I love that. Yeah. Taking risks. I mean, that's entrepreneurship, right there, so.
Yeah, 100%, man. That's what it is. But if you don't take a risk, like I said, if you have that outlook, then no one's going to listen to my music. Then they're probably not. If you put it out there, take that risk. Who knows? Like, they might not. Like, no one's guaranteed success. But if you don't put in the effort and you don't have the expectation of yourself to put out a certain level of quality, then why would other people think that why would they click on your music video on YouTube if it doesn't look that it's going to be good? That makes sense. So
it takes a certain sense of character, doesn't it? Right. To take those risks and to be bold and put yourself out there.
But then at the same time, like, if we take it back to a creative aspect, and for example, what we spoke about earlier, record labels, some people generally do it for the music. And then you have to realize that, okay, maybe you do need to have someone else that will do it. Like for example, like a record label or like a PR company or whatever, that they need someone else to do it, and sometimes having that realization that, that's not your strength. That is a strength in itself. If you realize you need to get someone else on board.
Totally, yeah.
Maybe you'll have to cut, percentage of, what your revenue to the label or whatever, but without that help, you wouldn't have got to that place. And I think it takes self-awareness to realize that. And, sometimes when you see people that do get that help, get to a certain level and say, screw the record labels, it's kind of, you got to this point because of the record labels, if that makes sense.
Totally.
It's a very, easy to explain example, but that's, you do see that.
Yeah, you do. That's an interesting one. It makes me think, what was your opinion on Spotify and streaming companies?
Overall positive, I think, because it has made it's lowered the barrier to entry to everyone to music, in terms of what Spotify pay and rates, if you compare it, for example, to YouTube rates, to like AdSense, it's very comparable. But then if you think about what it takes, for a YouTuber to make like a 10-15 minute video, you can't compare it to, a band making a song, because, the budgets are totally different. The cost way more to make a song rather than to make a video. So it's interesting in that dynamic, in that aspect. But overall positive, I think there's definitely more people that listen to us on streaming than buy the CDs. But one thing that did surprise me, that a lot more people bought the CDs than I thought.
That's cool.
what they would, because maybe there is this thing, CD sales are dead, physical media is dead, but people, especially in the alternative scene, do like buying physical things.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they wouldn't have discovered us and bought that CD if we weren't on Spotify.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's a trade-off. So overall, I think is a positive. It's interesting because obviously Spotify just announced that they're making some changes. Don't know if you've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, it's going to be like a minimum barrier to payouts as well. Which will be interesting to see, how many people it will affect. But overall, I think it is a positive rather than a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about that? With I don't know exactly what the minimum barrier to entry is, but YouTube has a similar thing now as well, right? You have to have 1,000 subscribers, I think.
Yeah, so they actually made it low. So it's 500 now. So it's 500, and then you have your watch hours.
Yeah,
and I suppose it gives, because the reason they're saying they're doing that is because there's so many people that would just play like white noise for 31 seconds and then just streaming it.
Yeah.
Bot farms to stream it,
and AI music as well, right? You know, it's going to flood the platform.
Exactly. So I can understand why they're doing it. I haven't seen what the thresholds are, but at the same time, it kind of goes back to the conversation: why is someone putting music on the platform? Are they just doing it for the love of the music, or they're wanting to make money? Overall, I think Spotify has changed music for the better in terms of discoverability. In terms of the business model, obviously, there's other platforms that pay better. Apple Music and Tidal will pay more. But if I look at the breakdown of our streams, it's about 80% Spotify.
Yeah, sure.
So it's one of those like necessary evils. I think at this point, I think they're obviously a massive giant. So I honestly don't know what the answer to that is.
No, I think it's cool. I like your approach to it, man, because I think I see a lot of people like really talk about Spotify as if it's the big enemy, as if only Spotify paid out more, artists, we'd all be, I don't know, whatever,
Oh yeah, I get it. Obviously,
the dream.
I think the rate should be slightly higher. Personally, I think the way it should be weighted like your first, for example, 100,000 streams is a higher rate, then 100 to 1 million is another rate, and then 1 million and above.
Okay, yeah.
Just to make it, fairer on the younger and up and coming bands, and that maybe need more. But I totally understand. Obviously, the bigger artists have more leverage with Spotify.
Sure, of course.
Labels. Totally get that. And I totally get, like you said, AI music is going to be a load of AI music, the white noise bot farms to get the streams that they are spending a lot of money in upkeeping the servers and everything. So I totally get why they need to do these changes. But I honestly don't know what else to say, because it's kind of like this thing now. Before Spotify and streaming, there was, pirating. So we go back to pirating, and then,
I mean, that's what really did it.
So
just the internet, just the digitalization of everything, really.
Well, yeah. So I mean, I guess we can go back to the whole Napster thing with Metallica and everything. Just go back to there, see if. But I don't know, man. Like what the answer is. I guess we just have to live with it now.
I think the thing is, right, we can all talk about it as musicians, and we can and talk about it in terms of industry, but like the real kicker is when it comes to you as a consumer, like how good is it to have Spotify, man?
Like I said, lowers the barrier of entry to any music, to any genre. You literally have 99% of the world's music at your fingertips.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it's a really fast system. Like the search is ridiculously fast when you consider how many, pieces of content there is. So as a user, 100%, it's a phenomenal platform.
And that's what you got to think is in industry. It's like, what is good for the user, right? We want the best experience with the product. Like we can't just like make it bad for the user for the sake of, I don't know, the musicians, because it just doesn't work like that, right? You have to serve the public.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then Yeah, you're 100% right. Because end of the day, for example, if Spotify wake up tomorrow, so we've got to pay musicians more. End of the day, money will have to probably come from the subscription. The subscription price is going to go up. So then potentially people are going to leave the platform. So then you'll potentially have less listeners. So I'm sure there's like people that have worked out, the correct algorithm or equation of how much it is. So
yeah.
But I think at this point, like you said, it's such an easy product to use. And because there's also a free product as well, obviously, with like the adverts and stuff.
Yeah.
It's now easier to have that rather than go on to pirate the music. So in one way you can say, well, at least artists are getting something from it rather than zero.
Exactly. And of course, like, I understand maybe some people will listen to this and think, no, I'm a purist, I want vinyl records or whatever, which is totally cool if that's what you want. But the real point is, like, on a mass scale, you don't have to like go and buy the physical album for, I mean, what, 20 quid, at least 10 quid or whatever from the shop. But even if you go into the shop now, most CDs are a fair chunk more than that. And that's just for one album. And that means you're going to, like, for the price of the Spotify subscription or whatever, you can have just one album a month or whatever. Instead it's like a utility, right? We pay a utility bill for our music and we have it on tap.
That's like the paymentification of the whole world. It's like, everything's a subscription now.
That's
honestly, I think we're at a point now where, because me and my wife actually, we collect CDs of the bands that we like. So we also have Spotify, but I feel like it helps the band to have a physical product.
Yeah, it's cool. It's great to collect, definitely.
But I think it's two different markets now, like of the physical media and people buying it on iTunes and streaming. I don't think Spotify's cannibalizing any sales of vinyls and CDs or digital.
No.
I think it's two separate audiences now. So I don't think someone that's got Spotify, it's a choice between Spotify or a CD or Spotify and buying music. I think it's a choice of having Spotify on not listening to that music.
So the thing is, you said you collect band CDs, and that's cool, and I totally get that, and those bands that you like and whatever, so totally understand. It's nice to have the physical thing. But do you listen to those CDs in a CD player? Or do you put the album on Spotify?
So I mean, sometimes we've got a CD player in the living room, so we generally...
Cool, nice.
So it's like a thing that me and my wife do, but you are right, 99% of the time it's coming from my phone through the car, Spotify, or
it's just more convenient.
Like you said, it's more convenient. But those sales aren't linked. So, for example, I will still listen to. I got Nightwish Dark Passion Play downstairs on a CD, but if I want to listen to it, I'll still probably listen to it on Spotify. So those two things aren't linked. So, like,
exactly,
so people saying that Spotify is bad and it's the streaming rates, which is one argument, but I don't think it's taken away from album sales as such.
The only difference is, previously that was the most accessible way they could provide the media. Vinyl records and then tape cassettes and then CDs. It's like, this is the easiest way we can get it into your hands for this price. Now that is streaming, which is so much more effective. But as you say, there is a different market for people who want to collect or really have the physical media to, get that kind of extra connection to it, and that goes for all merchandise. It's really kind of more in the merch category than the actual music.
Right, yeah. I mean, like, I collect CDs, but also got some vinyls. I don't have a vinyl player. It's literally like for the artwork, so it's like a physical thing. And it's interesting if I look at the breakdown of all like revenue for Crown Solace, for example, digital sales like iTunes and Amazon Music, actual folk buying the song, is very, very minimal.
Totally.
Digital now is either streaming, like we said, or physical. So I think there's just two separate markets, and there's no, it's not at the expense of the other, I think. So overall, I think it's good because we'll have Spotify, Apple Music, wherever. So I think I can't be a hypocrite and say it's bad when I. So
fair. That's it, man. Yeah, and I do think it's interesting that, as you say, Spotify. I feel like Spotify gets all of the stick. Everyone demonizes Spotify because I guess it's the biggest one. But even though, as you said, maybe Apple and some others might pay a little bit more, it's still relative. It's still it's whatever.
Yeah.
It's relative. But the thing is, like, they seem to get away with pretty much all the stick. It's like all Spotify is the bad guy. But the thing is, like, as you say, 80% of your revenue ends up coming from Spotify. And also Spotify actually gives artists tools to work with it, to actually like use discoverability features, to pitch to editorial playlists. Like, these are all features that the other platforms just for the most part don't do.
Yeah, so, 100%. Yeah, like they've got the best. Like Spotify for artists is way better than the Apple Music version of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if like Tidal and the other ones even have anything similar for that.
Mm-hmm.
But because more people use it, I think obviously more revenue comes from it. But the tools, like you said, like you can now, I believe, it's only in America just now, but you can buy banners on Spotify to advertise your tracks now.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And it will be like shown to relevant people that like a relevant audience, which is really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it costs like, I think it's quite pricey, like 40 cents a click.
Mm-hmm.
But the data that also Spotify have on people, like if we take Crown Solace, for example, we can then target our song to people that will most likely like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think back in the past, there was that kind of targeting, that kind of opportunity never really existed, to get people to listen to your song,
Totally, yeah.
So there's two ways you can look at it, like, yeah, Spotify, massive and evil, don't pay enough, but the tools that they do offer, like you'd said, like with discoverability and pitching to playlists and algorithmic playlists, it just, provides way more opportunity, I think, rather than drawbacks.
Yeah, cool, man. Cool. That's an interesting discussion, man. I could happily chat more with you about these things, but I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole, I suppose. It's already been going for quite a good amount of time, actually. I wanted to quickly touch base on just a couple of things just before we tie up. I was curious just to get a little bit of an idea of your interests outside of music, well, and business, obviously, as you've said.
That's a large part of it, man. Like business and music.
Yeah.
Gaming.
Cool.
So, yeah, I've got a gaming YouTube channel that I did over lockdown as well.
Nice. It was a busy lockdown, eh?
Yeah, well, yeah. And I got monetized, so that's kind of how I know about like the YouTube, like CPMs and everything. So
what are you gaming?
Sorry?
What kind of things do you play then?
Everything, man. So RPGs, sport games, racing games. I mean, I'm the biggest game I've ever played, Football Manager.
Oh man, nice.
Like if I count up all the hours since 2011, it's like in the thousands, man. Like it's just
how great is Football Manager, man? Are you a big fan of football?
Yeah, so support Liverpool. So that's another thing. Just Liverpool. Like so, because I grew up in England.
In Manchester, right?
So, London, Manchester, Cambridge.
Wow, Cambridge.
Yeah.
Wow, you're moving about a lot.
Yeah, just my parents, man. So that's kind of, and then moved to Aberdeen. So nice. Kind of lived everywhere. But yeah, Liverpool. But that's kind of music's, like the number one thing, man.
Sure.
Like last night, the Artist Murder were playing in Glasgow. I was like, you know what, I'll drive down after work and back on today. So it was back at like 2 a.m.
Oh, like, wow.
So I suppose that is the definition of like doing it for the love of it.
Nice. So you go to a lot of gigs and stuff then? Yeah,
man. Yeah. So kind of, there's nothing in Aberdeen. Like Aberdeen is kind of by itself. So Glasgow is where everything's kind of happening. About 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive from Aberdeen. But yeah, that's kind of my life in a nutshell, man. Just music, business, and we bit of gaming on the side.
Cool, man. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I don't get to speak to too many metalheads about that, but yeah, I'm a Londoner, so I have my
Oh, well, okay, yeah, okay,
Arsenal
fine.
Football
Yeah,
Club.
that's good. I mean, you guys are doing pretty well now. Last 2 seasons.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's going all right. We'll see. But I think Liverpool seem to be back up there on the heels.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we're fourth at the moment.
Yeah,
So
it's all tight at the top.
yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good. It's a good wee little escape as well. And like, it's actually strange, like you said, for some reason, not many metalheads are into football as well.
Yeah. I mean, in the States especially, it's just, well, I guess it's starting to get more popular, isn't it? Soccer, as they call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose it's a different kind of thing. But as you say, it's a great escape. I think it's like the one thing I do at the moment, or that I'm interested in, that just feels like I'm kind of completely switching off.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, because like sometimes maybe it's a bad thing if you're a musician or if you do music. You then look, for example, yesterday, I was like, oh, what guitars are they playing? Or like, what's the setup?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
Definitely.
cool to notice it, but sometimes like, it's sometimes cool just to be like a regular punter just watching football or whatever.
That's it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Definitely interesting, man.
Oh, cool, man. Man, yeah. I feel like there's a lot of things that we could talk about, man. We've already, you've given me a lot of your time, so I really appreciate that. Before we tie up, is there anything else in particular that you'd like to get in there?
No, just, I mean, thanks for having me on, man. And obviously you've supported Crown Solace as well, sharing our stuff. So it's still crazy to me that people listen to, the songs I write in this room, like it and share it and listen to it. And that's just thank you.
Awesome, man. Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, man. It's an absolute pleasure. Like, I mean, I think it should go without saying, honestly, I absolutely love what you're doing with the band. Crown Solace is just absolutely fantastic. And I think that anybody that's aware of you guys knows that, you're really on a hot streak coming up, man. So it's been an absolute pleasure to get a chance to have this chat with you, man. And I look forward to doing it again sometime soon.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. Thanks for having me on, man. Catch you later.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creating a Universe. A special thanks to Val from Crown Solace for joining me. I really enjoyed this one. Be sure to check out Val's band Crown Solace at linktr.ee/Crown Solace. Links will be in the show notes. That's all for this one. I'll see you next time.